Hi everyone. Good evening to all of you. Welcome to Ask Me Anything, the Sri Lankan edition of Ask Me Anything, organized by or brought to you by TLR Now or Team Lead Grow Now, which is a coaching, training, and mentoring company which where you can get all your services, the training services, coaching services, mentoring services, all under one roof. So there are umbrella of services designed to provide solutions to a host of problems. So my guest today is not a stranger to the Sri Lankan community. Whether you take the business fraternity or the marketing fraternity, he is not a stranger. So we have a strategist, investor, a director, and a people builder who has 23 plus years of experience in multiple sectors, including FMCG, manufacturing, conglomerate, F&B, banking, and insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tilan Wijeyesekera. Hi, Tilan. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Sasanka. Thanks very much for having me on board.
How are you doing today?
Doing good. All things considered, with everything that's going around us, I think keeping nice and positive, and things are looking up. Can't complain.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's begin the conversation, Tilan. I would like to ask you, what is the impact on the current market due to COVID-19?
I guess we need to look at a multiple number of dimensions on this, right? So I've also been trying to follow some of the social chatter, apart from talking to different people in different industries, and follow some of the research that's going on right now. Nielsen's is putting out research. Kantar is putting out a lot of research, including in Sri Lanka as well. So I've been trying to follow this. So as you probably know, we don't need research to tell us that consumption patterns have changed quite drastically, right? The way you and I used to consume products and services 2-3 months ago versus we are right now has changed dramatically. And the types of products that we are consuming also has changed. But there's a popular notion that everybody's just moved on to essentials, and that's where everybody should be focusing on. And certain types of products. But I personally have a slightly different view. When again, looking at basically some of the things that's happening in the market and some first move advantages with some players right now. So if you look at the research as well, it clearly says that certain SEC groups like SEC-A, social classifications, of course, are looking at other types of products. Now, if you look at me as well, apart from the essentials, I'm looking out for comfort food, right? We got to keep nice and positive, treat ourselves to something good right now as well, keep ourselves happy, keep the kids happy, etc. Right? So things like comfort food, little indulgences are still moving. But it all depends on the segment. A good example is if you look at SEC, C, and D, they are really struggling right now. If you look at the daily wage earners as an example, are really struggling to put food on the table. So as businesses, strategists, and marketers, we really need to understand the segments that we operate in and the kind of opportunities that are there. So the buying patterns have really changed, right? We are used to going out physically and buying certain products, right? Whereas now the way of modus operandi right now is direct to consumer and digital, right? It's all online buying. So e-commerce has really come to the fore. And there are some fantastic examples when traditional giants have been a bit slow. Even the state sector has come out very strong. Good example in that sense is Satosa tying up with Bikmi as an example, right? Fantastic example. How the state sector, fantastic. How state sector in enterprise can be so fast and so agile. They may have had a few hiccups in the beginning, but all things said and done, fantastic job. Bikmi continues to innovate, so we see. Absolutely, very timely. When you saw traditional giants in the supermarketing space being very slow and having so many issues, including system issues, all that, these guys came to the fore. So fantastic, right? If you look at things like brand loyalty, right? Brand loyalty is right now going out the window, right? Do you really care if you're having a Munchie or a Melbourne biscuit right now, right? You would originally 2-3 months ago, but right now you don't have an option. You would go for what you can get right now. But that doesn't say that these marketers can rest on their laurels, right? Because what you do right now has an impact in terms of who comes out stronger. As an example, it is a brilliant time, in my opinion, for trial generation, right? So for number 2, 3, 4, 5 players, whatever market attacking brands, it's a good time for you to penetrate the market. And I see that happening because some mainstream brands are out of the essentials list, while some other brands have managed to creep in due to relationships, as an example. So you got to be smart in this game, right?
Yeah.
Great opportunities. There are super opportunities right now if you're thinking smart and you're very agile in your approach, right? If you look at businesses right now, there are a lot of businesses crashing, right? Huge cash flow issues. People can't sustain their businesses. So as a result, there's a lot of job losses, there's a lot of pay cuts. We hear about this everyday announcements by different corporates. So it's tough times, right? But then imagine the daily wage earner. They are really, really struggling right now to even put food on the table. So those are some of the issues that we are facing right now in the market. So if you look at digital payments, and things are really looking up in that space, right? Everybody's going digital, right? But I see a lot of gaps in the way some of the digital guys and the strategists and the marketers are really dealing with consumers. You've got to understand there are different segments right now, right? The kind of people who were shopping online on e-commerce and the kind of people who were basically using internet banking is very different to who they were 2-3 months ago, right? You got less tech-savvy people coming online right now, and you got old audiences coming online now for e-commerce products and internet banking and all these digital products. So the problem is, if as businesses we are trying to push our same systems to our customers, we are going to fail, because we need to simplify some of the processes that we have. And this is where things like UI, UX really come to the fore. So people had to be really smart. Good example, I was going to say this later probably because I knew you probably asked about different success stories, but good example is Keells as a supermarket chain. Like, they were very slow off the blocks, right? There were a lot of complaints, a lot of issues, right? Because they had system issues. But look at the way they come out. Fantastic. Great comeback, I believe. So you can afford to make mistakes, right? Yesterday, I saw another brand, Kapruka, who had a serious issue, come out with an official apology. Tulit coming out with an interview, things like that. So people can make mistakes, right? It's just that how do you address some of those mistakes? And I see brands like Keells having done a fantastic job after failing initially. Great comeback, right? So you've got to change your systems. You've got to really be at this game right now, right? If you look at mainstream to digital, there's a huge shift in terms of people consuming mainstream media to consuming digital, right? So clients, brands, organizations, businesses need to understand this. Agencies need to understand this. There's a slight shift happening right, not slight, a big shift happening right now from traditional media to digital media. So that's another change happening in the marketplace, right? So lack of trust in mainstream media and news providers. This is not just in Sri Lanka. I've been hearing this. I was on a webinar a week ago where there was another panelist who was from the US. She said the same thing in the US as well. People don't trust official news agencies as much anymore. They're critiquing it quite a lot. And unfortunately or fortunately, people are right now believing in social news. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not going to touch on that. That's another 2-hour conversation there itself. But the thing is, there is that shift right now happening, right? So online news providers are growing rapidly at the moment as well. And that traction, there's huge traction for those content providers. Then the other thing I see is gig workers and the gig economy. I was doing this panel for SEMA the other day, and we were talking about how gig workers are really coming to the fore, because there are so many people losing jobs, but organizations need to get certain jobs done. Organizations are laying off people. They're laying off contract workers, casual workers, people on extensions. I saw the other day some announcement, people had to retire at an earlier age. All these are happening. Who is going to do that work? So gig workers are not coming to the
Since you touched on this, since you touched on this topic, Tilan, there's this question where people ask, people want to become generalists than specialists. So at this time, there is a tendency towards people upskilling themselves to become generalists. So what is your view on this?
Well, it all depends on the space you are in, right? I personally believe, especially if you're a gig worker, you need to be a specialist, right? Because moving forward, I'm not just talking about the current period of time, but moving forward over the next 3, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, the gig economy is really going to pick up in Sri Lanka. Organizations are really going to be looking at an agile workforce, right? Because right now they're suffering because they don't have an agile workforce. They don't have a flexible workforce. They can't get rid of people, right? In Sri Lanka, you don't have that kind of legal framework for getting hire and fire, right? So people are stuck with unproductive staff sometimes. Versus agile, if you have specialists with specialist skills, you're going to get picked up. So whilst yes, in certain segments you should generalize, have a wider scope. If you're a jack of all trades and sort of story. So you got to be able to deliver value to an organization who wants your talent. So me personally, as a gig worker, I would say specialize at the moment. If you have a demand, if you're a demand gig worker, see, if you're like a driver, stacker, whatever, low end, yeah, fine, you generalize, right? But if you're specializing in strategy, HR, marketing, digital marketing, AI, if you're a software developer, as an example, you want to specialize in a certain area, and you will get a lot of demand coming for you, right? So another thing that's happening right now is digitization. See, we forget that everybody, if you look at everybody's talking about going online, right? And going towards e-commerce, right? But the problem is we don't realize there are a lot of unscrupulous characters out there right now hacking away, right? If they're not doing it now, they will be doing it over the next few months. We find that even in amongst some mainstream platforms being hacked right now, a lot of news going around on that as well. So we are going to have another emergence of risk management, compliance, UI, UX, as I mentioned earlier. All those sort of attributes really coming to the fore as well. So those are some current market trends, but it's important also to understand consumer mindset. And again, listening to what's happening right now on social chatter, plus following something I saw on Kantar, they've done a great research on consumer mindset with about 3,000 people, I think, right now. And one thing they were talking about is obviously a lot of people are scaling down their spending. That's very obvious, right? Because of the reasons we mentioned earlier. But one clear thing is that, as Sri Lankans especially, we are a very resilient nation, right? Sri Lankans believe that Sri Lanka is a very resilient nation. If you look at what happened after the tsunami, what happened during the war times, what happened after last year's Easter bombings, as an example, we bounce back much faster than many of the even developed countries, right? That's a mindset. So there is that level of positivism. That is still there. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, a lot of people are doom and gloom. Unfortunately, I'm the opposite. I'm over optimistic at times, I guess. But people in general, businesses, people do believe that Sri Lanka will bounce back fast, right? So that's a good thing from a business point of view and a consumer point of view. When you talk about people right now, they're being very emotional. So you need to, as a brand guy, as an agency, as a communications guys, if you're in that industry, you got to understand the emotions. You got to understand the sensitivities. Right now, if you're going to be overly aggressive on your communications, you probably will suffer. There will be a backlash. And that's happened to a few brands as well right now over the last 3-4 weeks, right? You probably know some examples as well, right? So right now, people are reconnecting with them, right? Reconnecting with themselves. They're reflecting on life, right? And, they're thinking about family values. They're thinking about, spirituality. So, you understand these emotions and talk to people. Right? Contextualize your messages. Right. Be empathetic in your messages, right? Another couple of things is hygiene. Hygiene moving forward is going to be important across a lot of industries, be it restaurants, leisure industry, wherever. Hygiene is going to play a much bigger role than it did in the past. So can it give a competitive advantage as an example for somebody who showcases that as an advantage? And like I said, spirituality and things. So those are, I think, key changes right now in terms of what's happening in the market and what's happening in consumer. If I can touch a little bit very quickly on financial behavior, right? Because I came out of the financial industry last year as well. So importance of SCCA is very important. Right now, whilst everybody's struggling to survive, there's a lot of people out there sitting on cash, wondering what to do. Right. So there are certain industries who are saying doom and gloom, like real estate industry, let's take as an example, investment instruments, right? Banking and finance. If you think it's all doom and gloom, no. Pick the segment, pick a new proposition. If you're willing to innovate and come out with a value proposition, there are advantages, opportunities to make use of, right? So whilst there's overall cutting expenditure, there are those gaps those niches that you really need to aim at. So people are cutting down on large luxury. Obviously, things like cars and durables, yeah, you're going to cut down. Obviously, the government has just announced that they're going to be cutting down a lot of import areas as well. Obviously, you got to get the economy back on track, right? So you got to get the BOP back on track. So people are cutting down certain categories as well. So essentials is obviously continue to grow, but there are a lot of other categories other than essentials, like I just mentioned, which can grow. So us as marketers, strategists, we need to watch out for this. Yeah.
All right. When I went through your Instagram profile, you're also an influencer, Tilan. So there was one quote which you mentioned: "Be a solution seeker rather than an excuses deliverer." So you have been a solution seeker all your career. And
tried to.
could you explain some insights strategists and marketers can use in the decision-making process in these strange times, which can be used by them?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest problem I see right now is a lot of people crying doom and gloom, and people being negative. That's the biggest problem I see. Like I said,
And
I'm the
also
opposite.
we are getting questions from the audience as well. So let's move on to one of those questions right after your answer.
All right. So like I was saying, there are a lot of opportunities right now. And I'll give you an example, right? My personal example is that in the space of the last 5 weeks, I'm starting 2 businesses, right? Because I see two brilliant opportunities in the market space, right? And I'm going for it. So in this space of 5 weeks, I've already developed a value proposition. I got 2 different sets of partners in place, got the investments in place, and we're already going into implementation. Right now, I'm working on the legalities, right? So it's up to you guys. I mean, it's up to you to spot those opportunities out there in the marketplace. There are a lot of industries right now that's suffering, but there are gaps in a lot of other industries where you can make use of right now and succeed. Yeah, if you're willing to look for a solution.
All right. So let's talk about training and upskilling. What type of skills would the marketing fraternity need in these changed times? We talked about resilience. Let's align with that.
Right. So, I mean, I think if you really look at marketers traditionally have been criticized there for their analytical capabilities, right? They're not the most numbers-oriented people. Right now, you need to be upskilling yourself in that. And I mean, even having come out of the banking industry, I thought, look, the banking industry would use a lot of AI, ML, or at least data analytics, and it's very minimal, right? So it's about time that people really started analyzing the data, understanding some correlations. Example, if you're in the banking industry, NPAs, non-performing assets, are going to go through the roof over the next 1 year, right? People can't pay back their loans. So you need to understand which segments are able to pay back and which segments aren't, understand those correlations. So when you develop a value proposition from your credit scoring to your marketing to your sales to your operations, you need to really understand which segments you need to go and attack, right? So analytics is one thing. Strategy planning. I mean, I've done many strategy planning forums in Sri Lanka the last few years, and even under normal circumstances, very few organizations apart from the multinationals and leading corporates, blue chips, do proper strategy planning. Now is the time you need to do a few strategy plans, and you not just need to have one, you need to have scenario planning. You need to have multiple plans because you don't know the way this is going to head up. Right? Nobody understands right now. If somebody says that they understand when all this is going to be over and this is exactly the way this industry is going to go, etc., they're probably lying, right? You can't predict this. You got to have multiple scenarios. So that's one thing that marketers and strategists need to do: multiple scenario planning. Product development, that's another area that you need to upskill yourself in. Innovation, you need to be really agile right now. It's a great time for innovation. It's a great time to try out some new value propositions because there are those market gaps.
We have seen a few examples already, I guess.
Absolutely. We are seeing it, right? Like I said for myself, yeah, I'm in the SME category now, right? I'm no longer in large corporates because I'm now an entrepreneur investor. But I see so many opportunities, and that's why I've gone into it. I've talked to quite a few people who are doing it right now, right?
All right.
And there are some. Let's take an example, right? If you look at guys like Lasana Flora, if you look at guys like Yohobet, right? What were they in? Lasana Flora is into floral delivery. Yohobet was into leisure. What are they in right now? They're in delivery of essential goods, and they're making money, right? So they adapted. right? They were agile enough to change their business model. Going out of this, if they can build equity around a brand that they build, they probably can be more profitable in this new business segment than they were in the earlier segment, right? So there are plenty of examples like that if you're willing to adapt, right? So you need to understand tech. Marketers need to really start understanding technology, because everything seems to be moving into e-commerce at the moment. So try and understand that space, try and understand how consumers react to that space, try and understand how important UI UX is in as an example. Process improvement. Marketers are very poor usually to get involved in processes. They think my job is 4Ps and whatever. No, get involved in the process. Work with your operations guys. See how you can add value. Reduce your turnaround times, because competition is going to be very high, right? Your competitive advantage could be your turnaround time, as an example. Therefore, you need to jump into the process, right? Empathetic marketing, right? That I believe is very important for marketers to build on that skill. Try and understand your consumers better, right? Gone are the days where you can just operate off your gut, right? You need to do your research. You need to do, a lot more understanding or in-depth understanding of the consumer mindset right now. If you practice empathetic marketing right now, you're going to have a competitive advantage, because a lot of people are just like bashing on communications right now, and they're having backlashes as well, right? Finally, internal marketing. I haven't seen enough of that happening across the marketing fraternity in different industries. Right now, internal marketing, inspiring your people, giving leadership is going to be very important. People are down, right? It's up to you as a strategist, as a marketer, as a business leader to inspire people, saying that, look, your jobs are safe, your pay is safe, right? Let's work together. Let's come out of this strong. Let's come out of this stronger than we were. There are some organizations doing that now, right? So those are some things I think that marketers need to be thinking of right now.
All right, Tilan, let's move into a question sent by one of the viewers. So this is about investment. He asks, do you recommend people to invest on the share market at this point of time, given the share prices being drastically low? If yes, what industries to invest in? And if you opt not to, please advise why.
Well, number one, I'm not an investment specialist in terms of the stock market, so I don't know whether I'm the best guy to answer that question. But as a personal investor, I'm keeping my options open. Let's put it that way. I don't think the market has bottomed out. So me personally, I don't think it's the right time to invest yet. I've lost quite a bit of money already, right? But it's going to be. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the future when the market bottoms out. But it's going to be very hard to predict that. But there are a lot of industries. Don't just look at the stock market. I mean, look at the real estate sector as an example. You're going to probably have a lot of great opportunities come in there. Now is not the time. There's a bit more time to go, right? Yeah.
All right. There's another question. It says, how to market software solutions, as in how can a person market software solutions? What are the strategies that they need to think of when marketing software solutions?
Right. So, I mean, I'll tag the last question to this as well. Now, that's one industry you probably want to look out for, the tech industry, if you're an investor, stock market. If you have some players there, that's one industry that can really boom right now. I personally feel, yes, software industry, tech industry will grow. And what I think as marketers in those industry, what you need to focus on is a lot to do with the UI UX. I see traditionally coming out of the banking, insurance spaces, things like that, service industry, over the last 10 years, I've seen that a lot of organizations in Sri Lanka, especially, have not paid enough attention to UI UX and understanding consumer journeys, understanding the pain points of consumers. Like I told you earlier, right now, the difference between 2 months ago to now is that the segments who are online into tech products earlier, e-commerce products especially, were tech-savvy people. Now, most people onboarding right now are less tech-savvy, they're more mass market, and they're older profiles as well. They need to understand your tech data. So, I mean, things like, as marketers, you need to do to-do vids. How do simplified videos, how you should do this as an example. Without coming up with, equity building, emotional campaigns, certain things have to be very tactical and very explanatory, right? But I would spend a lot of time on the UI UX, to be honest, understanding the customer journey on your technology products. Start with the product. Don't try to get yourself out with the communication, right? That doesn't solve a problem. If you've got a bad product and you position it brilliantly, you're going to get caught out very soon. It's not sustainable. It's a short-term win. That's it. Don't do that, right? Build I'm not saying, golden mousetrap, not that, but, build a good product where consumers actually get value out of it, then communicate that effectively. That would be my message. Yeah.
All right. Until I'm moving on, I would like to ask you, what are the industries that are vulnerable in this tough time?
Yeah, well, a lot of
Mention a
industries.
few.
Yeah, a lot of industries, but straight off the top of my head, I guess leisure industry, right? Very badly hit. I feel sorry for the guys in that. I mean, last year I was in a bank and I saw the way the loans are going in that industry, very, very bad. So
And also,
hotels.
it was an industry which was picking up, and this
Yeah,
happened.
that's right. That's right. I mean, the recovery was so fast, and then when this happened, it was so sad. And Sri Lanka is so dependent on this, right? So hotels, travel agents, restaurants, airlines across the world are really suffering. So Sri Lanka has had its problem anyways, but global airlines are really suffering. Manufacturing, I mean, a lot of people are not talking about it, but manufacturing industries are suffering because of the curfew. How do you produce things? Your production can't work, your supply chain can't get going, your raw materials are stuck in the port, right? People are paying damages. We hear that on news every day, right? So transport sector is brought to a virtual standstill as well. I mean, even gig economy like Uber, pick me in the traditional transport space, not the delivery space of food, right? Imports are going to be really, really badly hit. I don't know if it's a real thing. There's a lot of things going around on WhatsApp. I don't know what you can trust anymore, but there's a list of 100 products that the government is looking at restricting imports, right? Whether that's a correct list or not, government will have to do that. They will have to restrict imports to get the economy back on track, and we should support that as Sri Lankans and people of any nation as well, actually. So certain areas like luxury products, liquor, perfume, kitchenware, bathware, a lot of categories are going to get hit because you're not going to be able to import those products. Banking and finance, well, banking especially, NPS, your SMEs, your corporates, the non-performing loans are going to go through the roof, right? That's my prediction. I mean, some banks will probably go to double digits. If they're not showing double digits, it's probably because they're doing write-downs, right? Otherwise, they will go into double digits. A lot of banks will do that. Yeah, it'll happen. But the way things are going right now, unless the banks really come out and support more. I mean, I know the central bank and the president has really come out strong and said, look, support, give the moratoriums, all that. But I know those are not getting processed very fast at the moment. So, time will only tell how fast things happen. Insurance. Insurance is another category. I see motor. I talk to quite a few people, even affluent people. They're saying, I'm going to a third-party insurance away from a full insurance on my vehicle. That's sad. Dangerous too, but I mean, that's happening. I mean, that could affect the general insurance industry. Life insurance, I'm sure persistence is going to drop in a lot of segments, especially the less affluent segments. Persistency, renewal of those and payment of their premiums is going to drop. It's already happening, I'm sure. It has already happened, to be honest, over the last 2 months or 1 month, especially. Luxury goods, like I said, will have a hit. Real estate right now is having a hit, obviously. It was taking a hit anyway over the last 1.5 years, right? We know what the condominiums industry was like, right? So they're really, really terribly hit, very, very badly hit. But for an investor, it might be good times moving forward. You might be able to pick up something. So it depends which side of the table you're on, right? And how you look at it. So if people do start investing, then the market picks up for that kind of a category, right? And so even if you look at marketing communications agencies, traditional agencies right now, I know are suffering, right? Digital marketing agencies, some are thriving, some are trying to survive. It depends on how you've really dealt with the scenario right now. Yeah.
And since you touched on e-commerce, most businesses are trying to include e-commerce in their strategies.
Yes.
So what do you advise? Have an omnichannel strategy with e-commerce or have a direct-to-consumer strategy?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer anyway in an omnichannel strategy. I mean, even when I was in corporate life, I've always been professing that. I've never been a guy who's said, go e-commerce, or go physical. You've got to integrate. You have to have an omnichannel. If depending on the industry you're in, most industries have to have an omnichannel strategy anyway. But right now, obviously, digital obviously is taking a front seat. There's a lot more conversions happening right now towards digital, and a lot of categories like internet banking customer penetration is going through the roof right now in the banks. In fact, there's some memes and jokes. I don't know if you've seen Sasanka going around over the last couple of weeks. Who grew internet banking in Sri Lanka? Was it central bank, the banks, or was it COVID-19? You all know the answer, right? I've been talking to a lot of my friends in the banking industry, and they're saying the numbers are going through the roof. But it's just that they need to work on simplifying some of those propositions right now, right? So I'm a big believer in an omnichannel strategy right now too, and I like to use the term phygital, right? Uh, it's a hybrid between physical and digital, right? I believe you need to have a hybrid. Phygital is the way to go as far as I'm concerned, right? And a lot of industries, they're cutting out the middleman, right? We see areas like fresh produce, vegetables, fruits, fish, meats, whatever. Now I have a company in software industry, right? We are developing e-commerce products, and we were into AI and IoT products, high-end tech, right? 2 months ago. 1 month ago, we re-strategized. We're totally going on e-commerce products right now because we are getting approached by organizations to take them towards e-commerce, right? So even a farm recently, one of the largest players in the market, of course, approached us recently to develop their e-commerce platforms, right? So the middleman is getting cut out, right? So there's opportunities right there, again, on a phygital approach, right? Have their own stores, have a middleman approach, and have their own D2C, direct to customer approach as well, right? So margins are really going to drop in certain categories, like the middleman is really going to get caught out here. I see a lot more people going direct, right? And that's a good thing. Now, I've had friends of mine telling me how lorries are coming to their houses, right? Unfortunately, nobody's coming to my place and do commercial. But and people feel good about it because it's a farmer. Sometimes they're getting together in little whatever unions or whatever teams, and they're bringing those produce to people. So the farmer is getting a better price. The consumers are getting a better price, and we feel good, and we are getting fresh produce as well, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of feel-good factors right now. Yeah.
Just a quick question before we move on.
And one more point, Sasanka, I just want to end that question on e-commerce. One thing we must be mindful is that traditionally certain e-commerce players have been charging ludicrous amounts of commissions, right? Whether it be the transport industry, whether it be the delivery industry, right? The food delivery. You know that even now on certain essentials, people are charging 20%, 30% commissions for those deliveries. That's killing industries. SMEs will get killed if you charge them those sort of margins, right? So when SMEs especially get that opportunity to go on e-commerce and get their products direct to customers, that will be a huge advantage and a huge saving for those guys. And that they can pump back into marketing to grow their revenue, right?
And also, just a quick question before we move on to another question from the audience. What is the weightage that you can mention that the people can use or the marketers can use when it comes to direct marketing and brand marketing? Is there any percentage that you can mention? 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever?
I'll be very honest, Sasanka, you can't give a straight answer to that question because it all depends on the industry that you're in. So you can't really generalize. But if you were to ask me of a certain industry, perhaps I could give you a more specific answer. But let's say certain industry, let's say B2B industry, it's all direct marketing, right? Whereas B2C, it's the skew is much more on traditional and digital, right? So direct marketing is right now, again, like I said, on digital, direct marketing and digital is moving ahead. Like I said, e-commerce versus physical, e-commerce is moving ahead right now. Same story. Direct marketing is right now growing rapidly at the moment. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to a question from the audience. What should multinationals do when market sentiments are buy local?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for the question. Because right now, like across the world, in Sri Lanka as well, I'm sure it's the case in India as well, there's a growing sense of nationalism, right? You hear that everywhere. It's all over social chatter, right? Everybody, including myself, I'm sure yourself as well, we want to support the local producer. We want to support the community, right? We want to support local business, and that's a sentiment that's really, really growing right now, and it's a good thing, right? And especially like countries like Sri Lanka, it's very important because sometimes we are over dependent on imports, right? There's a lot of things we can do right now. Government taking a huge initiative in terms of growing your own food, and I think fantastic, right? But getting back to your question specifically, how multinationals should adopt, I already see multinationals doing that, and certain multinationals are very, very good at this, right? I mean, you take a good example, maybe Unilever as an example, right? They're entrenched in Sri Lanka, and as far as Sri Lankans are concerned, the mainstream masses are concerned, they don't see them as multinationals, right? Now, do you take, let's say, brands like, let's say, Sunlight? I mean, it's so part of our life, right? Signal, all these things. I mean, Lifebuoy, whatever. And people, brands, Astra, all these things. They're positioned almost as local brands. And actually, some brands in these multinationals are only in Sri Lanka, as an example. There are plenty of those around as well. So they position the brands as Sri Lanka. So my advice, yes, to the question is, you would have your brand footprint as local right now, or you would localize it a lot more. I would get rid of a lot of these foreign messaging. I mean, there's a lot, how a lot of multinationals use a lot of foreign ads, dub it and put it. Now is not the time to do that, right? Now is probably time to invest in localization. I know you can't do shoots right now. You have to adopt different approaches. But I would say that you need to position your brands as really being part of the Sri Lankan fabric, the social fabric of Sri Lanka. And I see a lot of multinationals doing that very effectively, to be honest.
That's correct. And since you touched on messaging, what type of factors would the advertising agencies consider when delivering their messages during this time? Because it's a very sensitive time and people get emotional very quickly. What is your advice on this?
So how was the integrate? How should they be looking at message across? So I would say really focus on being very empathetic, understand consumer sentiment, right? Spend the time, understand consumer sentiment, be empathetic in your communications, right? Understand the community, what impact your messaging has on the community, right? And how people react. There are some brands I've seen, I wouldn't want to mention those names right now, probably a bit sensitive, who have done some great initiatives, but have had a backlash. Purely because people are very sensitive, hypersensitive right now. So if your brand is seen to be opportunistic right now, boom, you're going to have a huge problem. You're going to have a backlash. The brands that are going to stand out, I believe, my personal humble opinion is that if you can tag your brands to causes, if you can do cause-based, I'm a big believer in cause-based marketing, right? I've been trying to do this for the last 2-3 years, and now I see this will grow tremendously. If you do cause-based marketing, if you do more CSR, if you're visible as doing that, there are some brands. I mean, let's take some examples because all of us see it. Let's say, for instance, what Dialogue is doing with Manu Sadderna, what LOLC is doing with Hiru and Manu Sadderna, things like that. Whereas a lot of people in those categories are not doing anything, right? They stand out, right? And people will remember this. I'll give another example, right? While some categories and organizations are spending a lot of money on TV still, a lot of people are moving to digital, right? But they're spending on traditional type of messaging. The same ads communication strategies they had, they're still trying to adopt. It won't work right now. Versus, let's say now, for instance, look at brands like, I saw some examples like Lifebuoy, like Dettol, both in the same category, right? But these guys going up, setting up sanitization zone, hand washing centers across the country, things like that, they're engaging with the consumer, right? The messaging is actually engaging, and there's a feel-good factor, and people will remember this, right, after all this is done. So if you take a very short-term approach right now and you're very opportunistic and try to make a quick buck, you're going to suffer in the medium to long term. Versus if you take a very broader view and build your brand right now, right? Right now, everybody's cutting budgets. I'm a personal believer, this is the time when everybody's cutting, you go in hard, right? But don't go in hard in the wrong way. Be empathetic, right? That's how I would approach it. Yeah.
What are the new product ideas and concepts that you can propose to challenge this?
So like I said, Right. So like I said, I mean, it's a very broad question, depends on the category that you're in, right? But I would say to generalize this answer to benefit more people, try and understand pain points. Like in traditional innovation, always try and identify pain points of consumers and industries, right? If you understand the pain points of people right now, it's going to be very different for what they were 2 months ago, and it's very different to what it will be 1 year down the line as well, right?
Correct.
So understand those pain points, understand the consumer mindset, understand the gaps that your competitors are not in, and go in, right? Right now is a time for a little bit of focusing and not just going very general. If you're going to have one approach fits all, that's not a good strategy to have right now. Understand your different segments, sthanotiti prajna, right? So understand those different segments and what their requirements are and try and hit them according to that. So innovation is right now, I would say, on technology side of it, there's a lot of people innovating e-commerce platforms. Now example, my organization, I said NeoMinds as an example, one of the companies I have, we went from AI IoT to e-commerce platforms. Now we are developing e-learning platforms, right? Now we had developed an app for a taxi company. We turned that into a delivery app where we can empower any SME or any corporate to have their own delivery app. Interesting example, I'll tell you. I mean, of another forum, somebody asked me, "Can engineers do something right now?" Yes, there's something called video conferencing and online platforms, right? I'll give you an example where I convinced somebody, and right now it's in test phase. My dentist, right? So I call up my dentist. I said, "How are things, etc., etc." I said, "Look, I can't practice for the next so many months, I'm sure, right?" I said, "Hey, but what if we develop a customized platform for you?" Right? There are platforms like ODoc, Doc990, things like that by mainstream guys, but therefore the general guys who already work in the hospitals. But there are a lot of doctors, dentists, all these guys who have their domestic practices, right? So we've developed a solution for these guys. So there are a lot of opportunities right now to innovate, right? Whatever. Now, who would think a dentist or a doctor, how can you operate? How can you, have your consultation? You can't do the whole spectrum of services that you do because you can't physically inspect someone, but there are opportunities. So I just gave some examples just to, help you rather than just generalizing, for the sake of it. Yeah.
Yeah, now during this situation, what we saw was everything going on in the digital space, and digital marketing agencies are just cropping up like this. How digital marketing changed during post COVID-19?
Yeah, so right now everybody seems to be a digital marketer, right? I'm not one. I want to say that now because everybody's professing to be a digital marketer and everybody is approaching clients and saying, even traditional agencies are going out there and saying, "We are into digital marketing." Look, guys, don't BS your clients, right? You're going to get caught out. Stick to what you're good at, right? And the problem with is like everybody trying to be a digital marketer and more agencies mushrooming right now. If the clients
Yeah.
go with the wrong agencies who don't have the expertise to deliver, right? There's going to be a lot more lack of confidence among the clients and the brands, right? And the strategies. So that's going to hold the industry back. That's one problem I see right now. Too many agencies mushrooming, right? So, and risk management has to come to the fore. As when you're a client, if you're a large corporate, do you want to take a risk and go with untested agencies right now? Right, who don't have the capability. So sometimes you need to stick to quality, right? Stick to the people who are good at rather than taking risk. Because what we know is what's different between traditional marketing and especially digital marketing and social media marketing is if you get a strategy wrong on social media marketing, the backlash can be crazy, right? It can be really
And
bad.
we have
Happen very
seen
fast.
we have seen few examples
How
recently.
many examples we've seen over the years, right? And now in a situation where the market is very sensitive and the consumers are very sensitive, you do not want to get your strategy wrong on the digital marketing front. So that's a huge shift, of course, happening right now. I see a lot of people, a lot of my friends in the marketing fraternity, a lot of my friends in the advertising fraternity, when I talk to them, they see a huge shift happening from traditional marketing to digital marketing. And personally, I believe that's a good thing because I feel right now the return on investment on digital marketing is through the roof, right? It's very high. Anyway, it's always been higher than traditional marketing, but right now it's much higher because there are a lot more eyeballs on digital and social media right now, right?
That's
Be it
correct.
Google AdWords, be it Facebook ads, or be it content marketing. Your content. It's so important right now in digital, right? If you take your traditional messaging that you use in traditional marketing and try to just plug and play in digital, you're going to fail. Like, you're going to fail because it does not relate, it does not engage with the audience online. So have the right content strategy online, right? That's very important, and only the good guys know how to handle it. So those are some important things to think about. And also, the other thing I would like to really highlight is that you can't just leave this to the marketing guy or the advertising guy, right? Now, I'll give you an example. Even in some places I've been involved in, the agencies I've been involved at Loops as an example, at other agencies. When you have, let's say, three different companies in the same industry, three different teams handling it, we
Yeah,
see
correct.
lead generation is very good in all three. Let's take a bank as an
Mm-hmm.
example. I've seen
Yeah.
trends where different banks have had great lead generation, right? But conversion rates are totally different in three banks, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
reason is there's no point you going out there and having some brilliant content strategy or moving a lot of budgets to digital and getting those leads if you're not converting the leads. Your back end has to be strong, guys. Your operations has to be strong, right? They need to deliver. Your turnaround times have to be good, right? Your systems have to be good, right? Then you need to be able to deliver. Right now, if you're canvassing customers and customers are coming to you and you're disappointing them, that's dissonance, and that's a bad thing. They're not going to trust you in the future. So only generate the amount of leads that you can deliver on. So things like lead management systems and things like that are going to be very important. Building dashboards, identify a customer journey. Are they getting a solution on time, right? Are they happy? Doing a bit of a dipstick study and understanding how many of your consumers are unhappy versus happy. You need to be doing these sort of things right now, right? So apart from blaming everything on the advertising guys, the marketers really need to do a huge role within your organizations, working with your value chain, right, to deliver consumer satisfaction, right?
And let's move on to another question from the audience, Tilan.
Yeah.
How will social media shape up for an online business which sells non-essential items post COVID-19? Is referring to.
Right. So, I mean, look, it's a little bit harder than what it was. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always been applicable, right? There are plenty of durables or luxury items, indulgence products that are being marketed by purely on digital. There are 100% digital brands as well, right? Without having
Correct.
any form of traditional, right?
Yeah.
So e-commerce overall you can do digital, and that's not going to change in terms of the basic principles. But especially if you're dealing with slightly more affluent products or slightly more premium products, your job is going to be a little bit harder. So I would say that you would start moving away a little bit from thematic to a little bit more tactical in terms of lead generation, right? Because right now a lot of clients will want to convert. Those clients that you have will want to convert those leads, and right now that's what organizations read now. A lot of companies also get into this trap, I believe, of doing marketing for the sake of marketing and getting consumers. Right? They think getting revenue is winning. Oh man, I got revenue, I want. Brilliant. Nonsense. You got to get profitable revenue, right? You got to get profitable customers coming on board. So as marketers, e-commerce or digital marketers or otherwise, you need to identify the segments that you want to go after and hit those segments rather than to have a free fall, right? That will give you more profitability, because right now you don't want to get into too many unprofitable segments and grow revenue top line for the sake of top line. You got to have bottom line growth, and you got to have cash flow. That's another huge issue right now, right? If you're just getting customers on a credit basis, look, I mean, it's not going to work for you right now. People are struggling to survive. Organizations are struggling to survive, right? So that, I believe, would be, yeah.
Since you talked about the hybrid model, we talked about physical and digital.
Yeah.
And the sales fraternity, sales salesmen, yeah. So what type of challenges would they face, or what type of behavior or attitude should they have? They definitely have to be proactive. There's no doubt about it. What is your advice to them? Because I know that plenty of people from the sales fraternity is watching this today.
Yeah. Number one is positive mindset. leadership. Your business guys heading the sales teams right now need to be sitting down with your teams, right? Now is not a time to be cutting the oxygen off, right? What's your oxygen right now? It's not your operation. The oxygen right now is revenue generation, right? Example, if a lot of organizations are going right now and cutting their sales teams, getting rid of people and cutting their marketing budgets like crazy levels and not doing any marketing, you're cutting the oxygen off your system, right? How are you going to bring the business in, right? So leaders need to really step up, right, and start working with your sales teams, inspiring them, motivating them. A lot of internal marketing. I personally believe this is the time that you need to be spending doing a lot of internal marketing. Traditionally, this is done in the service industry, and I've been part of that industry, so I spend a lot of time doing it, right? I personally believe that a happy staff, happy customers. That's the way I've gone, right? So
Yeah,
so now it's even more important across a lot of different industries. So spend time with your sales forces, try to inspire them, try to motivate them, try and get them attitude to be more positive, because a lot of people doom and gloom and negative. If you think negative, if you think you can't, you never will, right? Simple as that. If you think you can, at least you have a chance of succeeding, right? And that's a key for sales guys. But some other things I like to highlight from a sales guy's point of view or a business point of view, even from a CS point of view, is now is a time to focus on the Pareto concept, right? 80-20, right? Look at the guys who are going to give you the most amount of business and the most profitable business. Right now, a good example is some categories. I mentioned some brands earlier as well. They could have done a much better job of looking after their existing customers, versus a lot of companies try to go and serve everyone, right? And they fail at serving everyone as well, right? Whereas if they focus and said, hey, you're special. Now banks are doing this. I'm getting multiple messaging from a lot of banks, from my relationship managers who are saying, hey, we'll do this concierge service for you, that for you, that. Brilliant. That's what you need to be doing. Keep your core consumer base happy. Keep your high net worth base, core consumer base, your strong loyal base happy before you try and satisfy everyone. So that's one thing I would like to say. High impact segments. Focus on your high impact segments. Another thing is cross-selling and upselling. Don't just onboard customers for the sake of onboarding customers and then move on to more. It's like the age-old thing that we keep saying, right? It's so much harder to get a new customer versus existing customers are much more profitable, right? It's a lot more costlier to get new customers. So when you bring a customer in, make sure you cross-sell and upsell. Now, don't go and screw this customer, right? Don't make use of it, right, in a bad way. Be ethical in what you do and give value to the customer, and cross-sell and upsell. I don't see enough organizations right now focusing on this, and enough sales teams right now cross-selling and upselling. They're bringing a certain product proposition in and they forget about it. That's it, right? I've ordered a lot of things online over the last 3-4 weeks. E-commerce platforms, traditional companies going on e-commerce, they're not marketing back to me, right? If any of those guys had marketed back to me, I'd be loyal to those bases. I'm trialing so many different people. A lot of people are doing the same thing right now. It's sad. It's very, very sad. These are fundamentals that people should be focusing on, right? And patience. You should be building trust right now with your consumers. Even if you have to take a short-term hit right now, keep your customers with you, close to your heart, and get them to trust you.
What do you reckon? Is it the problem with the mindset, or why don't people understand, as you mentioned?
Yeah, it's a mindset and a less strategic approach versus very tactical approach, right? I mean, and now's the time to call on favors, right? I mean, if you have good customers, it's the time to call on favors, and customers help people. Right? People help people. People help people who are close to them. Right? It's a time that you can make use of those kind of opportunities. And see, the other thing I'd like to also talk about an agile workforce. Now, as I mentioned, I'll give you my personal example to highlight this proposition, right? Because I'm a big believer in a gig economy right now and the future. One of my own companies, I mentioned New Minds, which was into high-tech AI, IoT, right? We don't need to have a huge sales force, right? But now, since we are into SMEs and corporates and have to, try and get after dozens, if not hundreds of customers, we need a sales force. We never needed one before. What did we do? 2 weeks ago, I just, put some posts on social media. I mean, you may have seen some as well, right? And I launched a freelance sales team, zero cost to company, right? Zero cost to company, 100% freelance, gig workers, right? So they work on a commission model, right? So these sort of opportunities are out there right now for a lot of corporates, and especially SMEs who didn't have sales forces. you need to have a good sales team, right? And I'm not saying the gig worker or the freelance model is the long-term sustainable model, but right now that's one way in which you can plug this gap that you have right now in your company. Yeah. So.
And also, there is a tendency now that people, at the current context, people they study global brands, how they work, how they advertise, how they create their campaigns and all that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to applying it to the Sri Lankan context, there will definitely be practical issues. What are your views on this?
I mean, first and foremost, I mean, why do you want to overdo looking at what's happening on a global brand point of view? Sri Lankan scenario is very different. Indian scenario is very different. US scenario is very different. Our cultures are different, very diverse cultures, right? Within Sri Lanka, there's so much of diversity itself as well, right? So, I mean, why do you want to, I mean, take some learnings of it. I share this a lot, especially with our teams at, let's say, Loops and Connexus, which are the integrated agencies and digital agencies. We take look at a lot of foreign brands and agencies which are doing some fabulous work, right? But we don't try to replicate. We do not copy, right? What we try and do is, hey, we recognize great work, brilliant, nice job. Okay, now what's happening in the local scenario? What are the local consumer insights right now? What are the gaps right now? How can we communicate to the local mindset right now, right? I'm a big believer in saying no to transplanting campaigns. That's what I personally, a lot of multinationals, some multinationals try to transplant campaigns and concepts into Sri Lanka without understanding the local psyche. That's been a huge problem. Don't do that now. More important than ever, localize your content, right? Very, very important, based on local insight.
And finally, Tilan, talking about SMEs, you said you have focused more on SMEs now. What are the factors they need to consider when coming up with strategies to face this post-COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, one thing is I see obviously a lot of SMEs are really suffering from a cash flow point of view, and their operations are disrupted right now, right? So obviously everybody is cutting corners, cutting costs, right? And try to optimize costs. But optimizing costs versus cutting costs is two different things, right? Like I gave you one example in the one of the earlier questions. Don't cut your oxygen, right? If you cut off your marketing budgets totally, and if you cut off your sales team now, get rid of them, how are you going to grow your business, right? Because sometimes it's very easy to close the tap, but it's not so easy to open the tap, right? So your question being post-COVID, during COVID, what you do during COVID is going to have a huge impact on what happens to you post-COVID. Like I'm a personal big believer in this is the time that you invest on marketing. This is the time that you invest on sales, right? So don't cut off the oxygen. Another thing is move to digital. I mean, SMEs especially, you can't fight the big boys in your categories, right? On traditional media. But now the good thing is it's a more level playing field, more equal playing ground, because even the big boys are coming on digital. If you have a good content strategy, if you can find a good content provider, if you can have a good digital marketing agency backing you as an example and developing some great communications for you, it's an equal playing field. And your ROI, return on investment, can be so much higher on digital marketing right now. So that's another thing. Another thing I personally believe that SMEs have a huge advantage is you're much more agile, you're much more faster, right? You can react to market scenarios much, much faster than traditional large corporates. That's a huge advantage you have. Use that advantage. Use that agility. Examples, like I said earlier, like Lassana Flora Yoho beds came from out of nowhere into delivering essential goods and FMCGs, versus the large supermarket chains couldn't do it for weeks, couldn't get their act together. Brilliant. And those guys are making more money probably on these categories than their core business that they were making earlier, right? So I see huge opportunities like that. So another thing is you can innovate faster because your agility is faster, your decision making is faster, right? You can innovate faster than the corporate. Corporates have huge bureaucracies, red tape to get through all that, right? As an SME, you don't have that. You have a small team, you have a leadership, you take a decision, you go for it. If you're going to fail, fail fast. If you're going to fail, fail fast. Fail. It's okay. People fail, right? But fail fast, move on. right? That's again, people think failures, oh God, when you failed on a product or a service, oh, this guy's bad, oh, blacklisted. Nonsense. That's a great learning, right? But fail fast. Right now, you can't afford to be failing slow. Put those propositions out there, try it out. If it's not working, modify the proposition along with what's not worked in that proposition. It may work, right? But you have that advantage, right? Cash flow is something for you to manage, so you need to be very mindful of that. Do you have the capital and the cash flow to do some of these things that we're talking about? And you need to reinvent, like I gave those examples. I mean, my own businesses, like I said, Loops. Right now, we are packed to capacity in terms of work on our digital marketing and traditional marketing both, because we got so aggressive. We re-strategized the business. We reprioritized the segments that we wanted to hit in terms of clients and the industries, right? And we went hard with a strategy. And now we are at capacity. Neominds, as I said, AI, IoT to e-commerce products. We reinvented. Yoho Beds, Lasana again. There are so many other examples I'm sure you can talk about as well, right? That have changed the business model. Very fast, they've changed the business model. You have the ability to reinvent yourself if you're an SME, as opposed to a large corporate. So there are huge advantages. Finally, the people. People are faster. Now, one big advantage I can say is in SMEs, you're like a team. You're like a sports team almost. If you've got a good leader in an SME, you can act like a sports team does. You rally your team together and you say, guys, now is the time that we really need to get together and work hard, right? Work smart, come out with propositions, and hit hard in terms of the marketplace. That large corporates can't do, as well, as much as SMEs can.
All right. I think, Tilan, this conversation is quite intriguing, but the time has become a barrier to us. So let me ask you, it would be great if you could deliver a message to the entire community, which will be useful for them in this current situation and going beyond.
Yeah, so I mean, final message I think would, in summary of some of the things that we talked about, is try to understand your current consumer and the market trends right now. People are going blind right now and just trying what they were doing, earlier, and trying to adopt certain products or propositions or campaigns according to what they think is happening without actually understanding what's happening. So do that. Number one, do that. Number two, try to build multiple scenarios of future. There's no one plan that will work now, because the plan will have to change, right? Because the scenario can change so fast. So scenario planning is very, very important for you. Have that. Re-strategize based on those different scenarios. Every time you need to be very agile in doing that. Be very fast in doing that, right? But grab those opportunities. Like, a lot of people are too negative right now. I am giving personal examples because that's the best way to prove it, right? I'm investing right now, right? Because there are opportunities. Identify those opportunities, identify those market gaps, and go into that. There are opportunities to be had, right? If you're going to fail fast and move on, right? As long as you can afford to, of course, right? And look at examples like what happened. I think when SARS happened, 2003. I don't know what. Whenever. I mean, look at guys like Jack Ma. These are the guys who thrived in those kind of situations, right? Look what happened to e-commerce after every one of those crises in the past. E-commerce, boomed. So identify the segments that you want to be and get in there. You can really thrive in the coming time, right? And those are, I think, my advice right now for most of you. Yeah.
All right, Tilan, thank you very much once again for joining us. And as I said earlier, this conversation is quite intriguing. And you can send in your questions on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, even after this session, so that we will be able to respond to them accordingly. So thank you very much once again to the audience and to TLR now for putting this wonderful online session. And we say thanks again to Tilan Wijeyesekera for this insightful and just amazing conversation we had with him. So before we wrap up, there's one message that I need to deliver. If you haven't failed, it says that you have never tried something new.
Absolutely.
Let's wrap up in that fashion. Thank you very much once again. Stay safe, take care, stay at home. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.